Hey, coaches, welcome back to episode 10 of FCA Coaches Corner, where we talk Jesus, coaching in the world of sports, featuring different guests each week. And so excited to have you join us. We are joined this morning by Coach Steve Rainbolt, the Director of Track and Field and Cross Country at Wichita State. Coach, how are you doing this morning?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. What's been your coaching journey? We always open up with this question. What's been your coaching journey? I know you are coming up on 20 years there at Wichita State. Did you spend any time anywhere else before that? Did you run in college, or what got you into coaching in the first place?
Yeah, it's interesting. I went to Shawnee Mission East High School there in Kansas City on the Kansas side. Then I went to KU. I was an athlete at KU for 5 years. I was a 1975 high school grad and then a 1980 college grad, and had a wonderful time at KU on the track team there, competed in the high jump and the decathlon. And then my first coaching job was at the University of Nebraska. My college coach was Gary Pepin there at KU, and I joined his staff at the University of Nebraska. Actually was on the staff twice there, got out and thought I might want to try something different than coaching, but missed it terribly. And so I got back in. I went there in 1989, was on the staff at Nebraska for 6 years. And then I got the head coaching position at Kent State University out in Ohio. Here in this part of the country, every single person that I spoke to when I told them I'd gotten the job at Kent State, it was like, oh, isn't that where the shootings happened during Vietnam War? And I was like, yeah, that's right. Well, I got out there. It's not, people don't talk about it as much out there, but they do have a significant memorial. But that is where there was a major, riot uprising on campus, about shut down the university in, I think, 1971 during the Vietnam War. Anyhow, I coached there for 5 years, had a great time, and had the opportunity to come to Wichita State, which was a move back home, basically. Really was intrigued because, the state high school championship is at Wichita State in Cessna Stadium, and I had competed there as an athlete myself, and it meant a lot to me to come back here and be part of that. But also, it was a good track and field program, it was a good conference, and it was back home, Kansas. So family was nearby in the Kansas City area, and it seemed like a logical move. So this is my 20th year here, and it's been a wonderful place to coach, a great place.
And you just got done with practice right before this call, which is why you're kind of in your car right now. So what does your summer look like right now? The off-season program leading up to fall stuff.
Well, to say I got done with practice is correct, but these are voluntary practices. The NCAA does not allow us to require summertime practice sessions. But if an athlete calls and says, hey, could you come out and work with me? So I was up in our indoor facility on this rainy day, having a high jump session with about 5 athletes all of them were multi-event athletes, decathlon guy and 4 heptathlon ladies. So the summertime activities with regard to contact with the athletes is only if they ask, if they, inquire whether we could get together for a summer conditioning session or a summer technique session. And we're always glad to do that, and glad that the athletes that are staying around for the summer or the local athletes want to get together and have a session.
That's good. I'll pass it off to Keith here in a second. But your official title is Director of Track and Field and Cross Country.
Correct.
So I'm guessing you have coaches under you. So what does that kind of culture look like? Are you ahead of the head coaches, or you're the head of all the programs, right? Or what does that look like?
Well, so Director of Track and Field and Cross Country for both men and women. So we have 6 sports. We have men's and women's cross country, men's and women's indoor track, and men's and women's outdoor track. So that's 6 sports. But basically, we have a men's team and a women's team. It's no different than at the high school level. The distance runners run cross country, but they're part of the track team. And so with regard to the cross country season, we have a distance coach, a cross country coach who is the head coach for the cross country team. And and then we've got a sprints and hurdles coach his name is John Wise. The cross country coach's name is Kirk Hunter. John Wise is our sprints and hurdles coach, and has the title of associate head coach. So he's something of a right-hand man on the staff, along with Coach Hunter, who is the head cross country coach. Then Heidi Yost Benton is our horizontal jumps coach, and Pat Wilson is our pole vault coach. And John Hetzendorf came with me, took off his cap and gown, graduated from Kent State University out there, and came out here and has been with me for 20 years, coaching the throwers. So that's the coaching staff, 6 coaches, including me.
Go ahead, Keith.
All right. Okay. So, Coach, I'm going to ask a question, and I want you, and this will lead into my other question. So, you were an athlete at KU. Tell us about your successes you had as an athlete at KU, and that's going to lead into my next question.
Well, I love track and field. I don't know. I suppose that, I'm a transparent guy. I am open and honest. I probably loved it more then than I do now. I mean, I absolutely was off the deep end in love with track and field. And I loved the high jump. I started high jumping when I was 10 years old. And so the high jump was my event out of high school, and it went very well for me there at KU. I jumped 7 feet my freshman year and got second in the Big 8, both indoors and outdoors. And then I won the conference championship my sophomore year and jumped 7'2" as a sophomore. And then I got third at the outdoor championship. So I won the indoor championship in the Big 8 in the high jump. And then I got third at the outdoor championship. And then I got this idea that I wanted to try the decathlon. And it's a long story how that happened. It's too long, but I really wanted to be a good athlete. I mean, I really wanted to achieve at a high level. And I saw some things and experienced some things as I was competing at a high level in the high jump that made me realize, some of these guys are better athletes than I am. I mean, it was like, geez, man, some of these guys have got explosiveness and pop that is just otherworldly. But the decathlon guys, in the decathlon, that's much more of a hard work equals success formula. You can bank on that formula in the decathlon, because if the guy who's prepared to work the hardest, the guy who's prepared to really analyze all 10 events and prepare hard for all 10 events is going to do really, really well. Bruce Jenner was a big inspiration because of his success there in the Olympic Games in 1976. And he did it with balance. And, he was not great at any one thing, really. He was good at everything. And on that team with him was a guy named Fred Dixon, who was a Christian guy, and was on the Olympic team in 1976. And then he was ranked number 1 in the world in 1977. And Fred became a good friend of mine. I literally called Los Angeles and asked for Fred Dixon. And the information lady said, well, I've got like 30 Fred Dixons. So I said, well, just give me the first 3. So I finally found Fred and started talking to him about the decathlon. And it was really cool because he was a strong Christian guy, and that meant a lot to me. And so anyway, I got into the decathlon, and I ended up making All-American my senior year in the decathlon, and got 10th at the NCAA championship, and made it to the Olympic trials in 1980 in the decathlon. And the decathlon became an extremely important part of my life. Then that extended on into my coaching.
Yeah. So here you are, you're a college athlete, you're a star, let's just say. So tell us, and I'm going to go another route too. Tell us about your FCA experience. I can't remember what you said about high school, but I know what you did in college. So let's talk about that.
Okay. So I became a Christian my senior year in high school at a Young Life camp, Castaway Camp up in Minnesota. And my Young Life leader and I had some meaningful conversation. He shared the gospel with me, and I accepted Christ there at that Castaway Young Life camp. Well, I came back, and and knew that I was an athletic guy, and I had heard of Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and some kind of way I became aware that FCA was there in the Kansas City area, you know, the national office. And I went around and got some friends and found a way to start an FCA group there at Shawnee Mission East High School. There was only one semester left of my high school. That FCA group ended up going on and being a meaningful FCA group for quite a while. Anyway, then I go off to KU, and at the end of my freshman year in college, I go to an FCA camp down at Oral Roberts University. And I hear a guy give his testimony about having been a freshman in college, and he was a college football player, and sort of losing his way, losing his focus on his faith his freshman year in college, going to a FCA conference at the end of his freshman year, and recommitting himself in his faith. And so that spoke to me, because my freshman year, I was sort of lost a little bit. I wasn't plugged in anywhere and didn't really know how to get plugged in. And it meant something to me. And I decided I'm going to go back and I'm going to try to start an FCA group at KU when I get back, just like that guy that I just heard his testimony. And I went back and I tried to talk to some coaches, and I tried to talk to some guys, and in the short few times that I tried to begin inquiring about starting an FCA group at KU, I didn't make much headway. It seemed like I just didn't make any headway. And some kind of way I realized that Lawrence High School had an extremely long-running FCA huddle. And it turns out that was the first huddle ever anywhere. Lawrence High School was the first huddle, the first FCA huddle anywhere. So it was a weird deal. I call up the Lawrence High School, and I ask about their FCA group, and they put me in touch with an assistant football coach. And this guy ran the FCA, and he invited me to come. And clearly it became evident to me the entire football team was there that night. And it became evident to me that this was just a FCA group where the football team got together the night before the football game, kind of for some team spirit and for some spiritual insights. I mean, I wasn't sure exactly, because I only met that coach one time. And at the end of that night, he was like, "Man, I'm so glad you came. You've got a terrific group of young people here." And as he's talking to me, I'm realizing I think he intends for me to be the leader of this group. And he's never even really met me. It was a weird deal. And I shook his hand, and I never saw him again. And I started coming on Thursday nights, and that was FCA, and I was in charge of it from that point forward, and had no idea what I was doing. And I had an entire football team that I was ministering to, so to speak. And yet the culture there in the previous few years had been that after the last football game, FCA was over. Well, I wasn't ready for it to be over. I wanted to keep it going. So before the last football game, we had the whole football team there. And the next week we had like 6 guys there. I mean, it was the 6 guys that had enjoyed what we'd been doing, and we grew it from there. And I did Lawrence High School Fellowship of Christian Athletes for 4 years. My 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th years, I was leader of the Lawrence High FCA, and I rounded up some of my college buddies. I rounded up some college gals. We had a gals group and a guys group, and then every 3rd week we had a combined meeting, and we'd have 150 kids at our combined FCA group. I mean, it was awesome. We had music. A guy named Matt Friedemann was our music guy, and he was a discus thrower on our track team. He was from Great Bend, Kansas, and Matt has become a, faith-based conservative radio personality, and he's a Asbury seminary grad, and he's a pastor of a church, and he's just a widely involved guy down in Kentucky, I believe. Isn't that where Asbury is?
Yeah.
Is in Kentucky?
Yes.
And that's where Matt is. and he was a beautiful guitar player and singer. And so we had a great time with Lawrence High FCA for 4 years.
Okay, so you told me one time that out of that huddle, and I don't know if it was the high school kids or it was your college athletes, didn't you say there's like 6 people who are in full-time ministry now from that huddle? Is that right?
From that Lawrence High School huddle, at least 6 guys went into full-time ministry. Whether or not all of them are still in it, I don't know, but I know that at least 4 or 5 of them are still. There's a pastor of a church, Mike Vincent, up there in Kansas City. Dave Rothkar spent a career as a missionary in China. Now he's working. He and Coop and I got together. I know you know Chris Cooper, but we got together down in Fayetteville. He's in Fayetteville, working in a missionary program, and so in other words, he's placing missionaries now. But he spent I don't know 30 years as a missionary in China, and it goes on. Dan Brenton was for years on the Campus Crusade full-time staff, and I think he's pastor of a church now somewhere like Alabama. And so, and it goes on. Yeah, a bunch of guys. It was humbling for me to see the number of guys. And
those were high school kids that we're talking about, right? That graduated and went on to ministry, right? Wow. So that's
in no uncertain terms, a number of those guys became Christians in the Lawrence High FCA.
Wow. That just shows me the example of an athlete using their platform to make a difference in, as an athlete, to make a difference to the people younger than them. That's unbelievable. So how is it, for you as a Christian coach, then, I know it's important to you. Tell us how, or, well, it is important to you. How are you trying to live that out? How are you living it out? To your coaching staff or to the players, or how do you try to make an influence as a Division I college coach?
So, I realize that we're having just a conversational interview here and discussion, and that's what I'm most comfortable with. And I say that because that's a difficult question to answer, I suppose. I can assure you that as a young guy, I was very idealistic in my approach. I wanted to change the world through coaching track and field. And I still feel that. Don't misunderstand. It's not as if I've lost any of that, but let's say that I wanted to change the world for Christ. Well, I suppose that I've tempered that. Do I still feel that way? Absolutely, I still feel that way. But I suppose that as the years have gone by, my objective has been to live out my Christian faith, and hope that my athletes are aware of that, hope that my athletes are seeing that. Obviously, at Wichita State University, I'm not sharing my faith with my athletes in a team meeting. I say obviously. I hope you understand what I mean when I say obviously. That's at a state-supported institution. I'm not sharing my faith, but I am encouraging the athletes to get involved in the FCA group at Wichita State. I am mentioning it every semester that FCA is happening, and we're promoting that to them and hoping that they'll get involved in that. And then I'm looking for opportunities to share my faith with my athletes in a more private setting when I feel like that's an appropriate situation. And I have had many of those opportunities over time. And I suppose when I say I've tempered that, I go along and really and truly, I want to encourage our athletes. I want them to know and have a sense that that's as a result of my faith as a Christian, and I want to have a positive impact on their lives. And so I don't know if that's a comprehensive answer. It's certainly not. We could decide to have an interview about just that question and talk about it for 90 minutes. Or, you know what I'm saying? We could talk about it at a workshop all day. But that's a short answer.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Great. Okay, Aaron, you're up.
All right. Those are awesome things. And I love that story of, the young people from Lawrence High going into ministry. That's great. And so with that being on that thought, who was it in your life that was a big influence, whether it be a coach, a youth pastor, a parent, whatever, that what was kind of a mentor of the faith to you? When did that happen? And, what was it that happened?
Okay, so first of all, I appreciate you making a nice comment about the story I told about being involved at Lawrence High School. And I want to expand on that and tell you that my experience there, and also I was a camp counselor at Kanakuk Camp in the summertime in college. And certainly as a result of my involvement with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes Lawrence High Huddle, I learned that ministering to those young people and giving away my faith and serving them in a ministry situation was certainly every bit as beneficial for me as it was for them. It grew my faith. It strengthened my faith. It was wildly impactful in my life. And I think that, and I know, as we talked about, that it was impactful in lots of those young people's lives. But boy, there's no better way. I will tell you that as a coach, I learned in my sports sciences class, my motor learning class in college, that the best way to learn a skill, a technique, whether it's throwing a football, shooting a basketball, whether it's high jumping or throwing the shot put, is to teach it. So I'm constantly having my athletes learn by teaching. Help your teammates. Give your teammates some tips. If you see something that your teammate is doing wrong, help them out with that and discuss it with them and brainstorm with them. And the athlete that's giving away that information is benefiting the most from it. The greatest way to learn a skill is to teach it. Well, the greatest way to grow your faith is to give it away and to encourage others in their faith. So when you mentioned that, it caused me to think of it, and I wanted to point that out to you. So I apologize. Repeat your question now.
I was just going to say, who was one that impacted your faith to where you kind of got started on your faith journey, and what did that look like? That sort of thing.
So I'm going to mention a couple people. So Kent Matthews is a pastor up in the Ottawa area, and he was one of our leaders of that Young Life group that took us to Castaway when I was a high school kid. And he's the guy that led me to Christ there at that Castaway camp. And he's just a remarkably brilliant man and a wonderful guy and a lifelong friend. So my Young Life leader in high school was very significant. And then Chris Cooper is a guy that I know Keith knows really well, and he was a college buddy and one of the most remarkable guys that I've ever been around. And he's now he spent many years, I don't know, Keith, what do you think, 30 years or something like that at Kanakuk Camp as a director of the camp. And he's now in inner city ministry in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and is truly a saint. I mean, he's a guy walking around on the earth who is a saint. I just am forever impressed and thankful for my friendship and my relationship. I'm one of 100 who call him their best friend. I mean, I truly believe that guy stood up as best man at 75 weddings. And I don't know, maybe 125 weddings. How many guys have stood up at 100 weddings as the best man? And I know that when he was a counselor at camp, he had to take his days off. Every day off had to be going to a wedding because he was invited to be in the wedding at all the time. I mean, because everybody found that guy to be their best friend. He's just a remarkable guy. And he was super impactful in my life in college as a friend, and that I had fellowship with on the daily, and was helping. He was a roommate of mine and was helping me to grow my faith.
At this point, in your life, and you've been in Wichita for 20 years and coaching and so forth, who are your spiritual influences right now? Like, how are you're pouring into your athletes constantly, obviously coaching them, teaching them, and as you alluded to, you're sharing your Christian faith, which is tremendous. Coaches are the greatest influencer that we have in this this life, especially with the college and they're away from home. How are you getting fed? What are the things that you do, whether it be, as you said, on a daily or weekly? What are ways in which you feel the Holy Spirit working through you, and how does that happen?
Well, on this very interview is Keith Townsend, and that's a guy that I've appreciated his friendship so much over the entire time that I've been at Wichita State. I think, Keith, isn't that right? The entire time? Yeah. I've been here 20 years, and I met Keith fairly early on, maybe in my second year or something like that, and have had a close friendship with Keith, regular fellowship, getting together, and he's been such an encouragement to me. I've gone through my share of ups and downs during my time at Wichita State, and Keith has been a faithful friend to me that entire time. And so he's one of the very first guys that I think of. And then men in the community that I meet with on the regular, and have been a tremendous encouragement to me. And so and then coaches that I know that are Christian guys, that I appreciate their friendship and their help to me. And then Chris Cooper is a guy that I mentioned that was super impactful to me as a young guy and remains impactful in my life to this day. Now, I don't see him as often because he's down there in Fayetteville, but every time we talk, I am unbelievably encouraged in my faith and appreciate he's such an uplifting guy. So those are a few of the thoughts that I have.
That's awesome. Thanks a lot. Ty, you want to go ahead and go with the legacy part now?
Yeah. This has been a great talk, great discussion. Kind of following up on what the story that you and Keith were talking about, those 6 kids that went into full-time ministry. And this is going to lead into my last question, but I just always remember a quote that a good friend of mine once said. He said, it's a great blessing to know Jesus. It's a greater blessing to lead somebody to Jesus. But the greatest blessing is when you're leading people to Christ who are going to lead other people to Christ, kind of that generational impact. And that's what you're living in right now, which I think is, so encouraging for me. So the last question we always leave off with is, what do you want your legacy to be as a coach? Your retirement ceremony or your funeral years down the road, when you got former players coming up talking about, man, Coach Rainbolt was this, Coach Rainbolt was this. What do you want to hear from the athletes that you are influencing currently?
If a episode like you just described went exactly the way that I hoped it did, or that I would hope it would, something about encouragement. I want to be an encourager. That has become a focus of mine. Again, we could have a workshop about that. No question about it. We could take a 2-day seminar about just the value of encouragement. And it seems so simple to me that would you rather be encouraged or would you rather be discouraged? I've never been able to wrap my brain around the people in the wide world. I want to say coaches. I suppose I should say coaches right now, because this is a coaches Zoom meeting, that are discouraging, that are harsh, that are mean-spirited. I'm not suggesting that there's no place for tough coaching. I do a little bit of that, but I'm not going to dress somebody down right out there in the middle of track practice. I'm going to try to be an encourager. Now, if they need a talking to, I will give that to them, but it'll generally be behind closed doors in my office. And yeah, I'll raise my voice and I'll get upset with them. But generally, even that is with the objective of being an encourager. I want to feel like that we finish any discipline episode or any competitive session, competitive, like a track meet or a practice session, or any time that I'm encountering those athletes, I would like to feel like I'm an encourager. I would like to encourage them. That's what I want to do. That means a lot to me. And I feel like that when I am being an encourager and when I'm successfully carrying that out, that I'm more likely to have opportunities to share my faith with these young people, if they feel like they're with someone who's going to encourage them.
Absolutely. That's so good. and those your past players, your current ones, and your future ones are blessed to have you as a coach. So thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Hey, Todd, can I ask another question?
One more.
Coach,
go ahead.
I really want to echo your theory of being an encourager, because you are an encourager, and I see that in practice. How many conference championships have you guys won since you've been at Wichita State?
Well, we've won 34 team titles, and 2 of them have been in the new American Athletic Conference, and 32 of them were in the Missouri Valley before. We were in the Missouri Valley for 17 years, and we won 32. Now, remember, we compete in 6 per year, so we have more than one opportunity per year, obviously. But we won a lot of women's championships in track and field and cross country, and we won quite a few men's.
Yeah. And how many all-conference players have you had, probably?
So I was concerned that you might ask me that. I mean, all conference is top 3. It's got to be it's a few hundred. I mean, it's a lot. That number is a lot. The more the question, how many conference champions? I don't have that number committed to memory, but it's something like 250. It seems like I saw the other day. Now, that's not just me coaching. Remember, I got a coaching staff of 6.
Exactly.
That's our team. That's the team.
And how many All-Americans have you had?
I think we've had about 30 All-Americans during my time here. Now, that's even a tough question, because like Alafine Tuliamuk was a remarkable distance runner for us, and she won 13 of them. But so if we count each individual All-American performance, it's probably been something like 45 or 50, or I don't know, maybe 75.
Well, the reason why I'm asking, I just think that's a testimony to your coaching style, your encouragement, the way you let your coaches do their thing, and how many times I've seen high school kids come into your program who weren't necessarily great in high school, and by the time they graduate in 4 or 5 years, they're All-Americans, and they're just doing unbelievable things. So that's why I wanted you to mention those numbers, because I feel like it's a part of your encouragement style and how you coach. And let's do something funny. I remember the story that you told about you and Chris Cooper sleeping out in the balcony. Can you remember that story?
Yeah, I do.
Something about rain. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah. So we wanted to set up a weight room in our apartment. So we took the bedroom and turned it into a weight room, and we set up our bunk beds out on the balcony of this apartment complex. And it's kind of an involved story, but obviously we were in danger of getting rained on or snowed on. So we had heating blankets, which wasn't very smart because of the obvious electrical concern with rain and everything. But anyway, we put together a plastic sheet that we strung across, and we put up a clothesline, and then it went down. And so when it was going to rain, we just unroll this plastic sheet and create a little lean-to tent. Well, one night it's raining and we're sleeping. And I mean, we're sleeping good, man. It was cold, and it was rainy, and it was beautiful conditions and we're under this plastic sheet. Well, the raindrops begin accumulating on the plastic sheet and coming down and coming down and coming down. And pretty soon I wake up and I've literally got a fishbowl resting on my stomach, and I'm trapped by a massive, I don't know, couple gallons or more of water on my chest. And so I'm going, Cooper, you need to wake up and help me out here. Well, that guy was the hardest sleeper in the wide world, and I could not get him to wake up. And I ultimately end up having to climb out, like slide out from underneath this fishbowl of water, and go in and get dressed up with, like, I put on one of those, Elmer Fudd hats, just because it was the first thing I saw, because it was cold outside, and a jacket and some sweatpants. And I go out there with a bucket, and I'm bailing water out of the bed. And along about now, Coop wakes up and he just completely lost it. He had to laugh as hard as he's ever laughed in his life. And I'm there bailing water out of the bed. And so anyway, it was stupid to live out there on that balcony, I guess, but it was fun. And I like sleeping in the cool conditions. So that was that story.
That's a great story. Thanks for sharing that.
Before we finish, I want to encourage you guys. I appreciate you guys and your ministry to the coaches and the athletes in the colleges and high schools in Kansas. It's just awesome. And I hope that any coaches that might hear this would connect with you guys and work closely with you guys to build the best FCA groups that they possibly can at those high schools and provide outlets for those young people. So thank you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate you, Coach. We talk all the time within FCA about transactional versus transformational coaching, and you are a transformational coach. So, and that's really, we have tried to provide this platform. We could go get, out of state contacts and stuff, but we've really tried to provide a platform where coaches can hear in-state guys, people that are rubbing shoulders with them, that are doing it the right way, that are making that generational impact. So, and as you said, you grow in your faith as you teach and share it. So, man, thanks for being obedient to Jesus, and we look forward to connecting with you soon.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate you having me here today.
Yeah, thank you for doing it.